Call David Bennett.
I move that the question be now put.
I call Grant Robertson.
Mr Chair, it's a pleasure to take a call on this new part today of the bill. I share with my colleague Chris Hipkins my conflicted views about the 8th of November. Because the 8th of November is obviously the day on which the national government won the election, and while democracy had its say there, that's something I think many New Zealanders who perhaps voted for the National Party are now regretting. They're regretting that they voted for a government on the 8th of November, the day that we would have this bill expire, a government that would come into office promising to do all kinds of things and then going back on those promises. It might, we've had the example, it might have been about raising GST, but here we are in this House, and those New Zealanders who voted perhaps for the National Party on the 8th of November wouldn't have thought in doing so that they would be contributing to giving away part of New Zealand's sovereignty, to actually saying we're going to put forward a bill, we're going to support a piece of legislation in this House that is actually about apparently, although Jerry Brownlee's not sure, acquiescing to the demands of a corporation in America in the form of Warner Brothers and just saying, we'll change our law, we'll do whatever it takes, it doesn't matter what it is, we'll do whatever it takes to do this, to do what they want. And Mr Chair, the expiry of this piece of legislation on the 8th of November, as proposed by Trevor Mallard, is clearly something that the editorial writer of the New Zealand Herald would support. But perhaps more than that, what's more interesting than that to me, Mr Chair, is the letters to the editor that sit beside the editorial on this morning's New Zealand Herald, from everyday New Zealanders looking at what the national government's done and saying, what is this about? And I'll just read the very end of it, of one letter here, the first letter in here. The government has made it clear that our sovereignty and democracy are there for the highest bidder. Either that or this was just a ruse to rush through further attacks on the few remaining rights of working people. And that's the question. That's the question. That's the question that needs to be answered in this House, Mr Chair, is exactly what it is. Because on this side of the House it sure looks like there's been some rampant opportunism from the national government. Rampant opportunism from the national government. Having created a crisis because of Jerry Brownlee's inaction as Minister for Economic Development, not keeping the relationship with Warner Brothers going, crisis management ensues, and the National Party then breaks out into opportunism and said, here's another chance to attack workers in New Zealand. We're doing it already with the 90-day bill, they say. We're doing it already with restricting union access. Here's another opportunity. So we want this bill, Mr Henare, to expire on the 8th of November, the new Part 2A of this bill, because we believe this is bad law. The New Zealand editorial is exactly right. These kinds of deals lead to bad law. This is that bad law. Because the government has come to this House unsure of why it's putting this bill up. It's either because Warner Brothers forced their hand or because there was some huge dramatic problem in the film industry and the video game making industry that needed to be solved. Sorry, was that Mr Brownlee? My limited understanding of these matters. If Mr Brownlee had any Wellington MPs in his caucus who were paying attention, they would have known that over the last 2 years there have been huge concerns about whether The Hobbit would be made at all as a movie because of the problems going on in Warner Brothers, the problem going on in MGM. Those problems happened. Mr Brownlee did nothing to find out. He didn't go to visit them. He didn't even try to get out there and see whether New Zealand's film industry needed a little bit of assistance from the Minister for Economic Development. And whatever some people might say about my colleague Trevor Mallard, and they do say a lot, when he was the Minister for Economic Development, he worked hard on those relationships. He made sure that New Zealand actually was there. And Mr Brown, 120 movies made, 120 feature-length movies made under the Labour government's watch because we worked hard on building those relationships. We made sure that there were people in the Hollywood film industry who knew that New Zealand was committed to this. And in the last 2 years, in Wellington, when most Wellingtonians who had any connection with the film industry were aware of the problems at the Hollywood end, Jerry Brownlee did nothing. So, Mr Chair, this bill should expire on the 8th of November because the writers of the letters to the editor in the New Zealand Herald today, bar one of them, are correct. because they're correct in saying that it just seems New Zealand's prepared to sell itself off to the highest bidder. The editorial writers, now we know on this side of the House, the New Zealand Herald isn't always known as a harbinger of radical left-wing thought, but here they are, putting this...
Call Chris Tremaine. I move.